So much rain around the Boundary Waters this summer. We're going to talk about that in the episode. Want to let you know this episode is brought to you by Sawtooth Outfitters. They are conveniently located on Highway 61 in Tofty as you're coming up the North Shore. Whether it's your first trip or you're an experienced voyager, they are there to outfit you with the right gear and knowledge to ensure that you have an unforgettable trip to the Boundary Waters. They have ultralight canoe rentals and outdoor gear store, as well as Sawtooth and stock with clothing, gear, maps, all kinds of souvenirs. So they've got you covered. It's not too late to plan a trip to the Boundary Waters this year. Check them out at sawtoothoutfitters.com or give them a call today and start planning your trip. Welcome to episode 9 of the Paddle and Portage podcast. I'm Joe Fredericks.
And I'm M. Baxley. The weather.
The weather in the Boundary Waters this paddling season has been impacting trips, and primarily because of the rain.
It seems like each year now there is some weather phenomenon, event that is altering the course of the summer paddling season, whether it's drought, wildfire risk, and now we find ourselves on the other end of the tragic weather spectrum.
Flooding.
Extensive, land-altering, trip-altering flooding that will come to define the paddling season of 2024. We've been hearing these types of headlines, right? Extreme weather events increasing. That's part of what we have to come to expect out of our climate these days. But it's a completely different thing to be in these weather events as they unfold.
And on this episode, we're going to hear about some of the high water and the flooding from the summer of 2024.
And our plan was to go to Foretown and do day trips. So we were going to plan on going up, Horse Lake, up the Horse River into Lower Basswood. We just figured that we would hang out on Monday, deal with the weather on Tuesday, and then, plan on Wednesday and Thursday doing day trips.
I knew I had a short window. I hadn't gone fishing in a couple weeks, so I just wanted to get out and enjoy some time, get the dog some exercise. So I figured, hey, I'll get there at 10. I'll fish until 2:30 or 3, and I'll get out of there before it starts raining and thunderstorming. So I was aware that there was a storm coming, and I did check my phone, but I wasn't scared off by the, scattered showers and 3/4 of an inch that they had forecasted for that day. The lake I went into is Lake Agasa, which is on the opposite side of the Echo Trail from the Angleworm Entry Point.
June 18th started as a normal day across the Boundary Waters region. For most folks who frequent the wilderness, a forecast for rain is simply another variable by which to strategize a successful experience. It had already been a wet summer, wet enough, in fact, to saturate the landscape. The bogs, swamps, and marshes have already filled to capacity. More water would have no natural place to flow. True to the forecast, the rain began to fall. While Eric Glosson, an Ely resident, headed in to Agatha for a day of fishing, Kaethe and Josh Boutelle planned to weather the storm on Foretown. Also camped on Foretown were Mark Kaesmeyer and Tony Perry, who entered the wilderness via Mudro on June 14th, with their sons Jared and Sam, with plans to depart on the 19th. They spent most of the trip on Crooked Lake, taking in the quality fishing before heading to Foretown as the storm rolled in.
We were out fishing for a little while, and the first spot of lightning, Tony and I said, I think we're going to get off the water, and that was probably about maybe 1:30. We got on shore, and there was a pretty strong wind that came through right away and blew our good trusty CCS tarp and yanked a stake out, popped that back in, and then after that, it was almost a straight down rain for the rest of the day and the rest of the night.
Usually I don't have my phone on or with me, but that day I did. And we actually got a tornado warning alert at like 2:19 in the afternoon.
Roughly around 1:45-ish. So I thought I still had time to get out of there before the storm started. I caught my first walleye, and I was really excited about that. It was a nice big keeper walleye. So I threw it on the stringer, and out of nowhere, my phone started exploding with those tornado warnings that I assume everyone else was getting too. I did not see that coming. My phone advised me to get in a sheltered area, preferably underground in a strong structure. That was not accessible to me. I saw the storm coming off in the distance, but it kind of snuck up on us faster than I expected.
And it downpoured for probably 3 hours with lightning, thunder. We had one crack of thunder that must have been on the lake because it was really loud, really close.
And then there was one clap that sounded like someone took a shotgun and set it off right next to our ear. And I tell you what, I yelped. I'm pretty sure you yelped.
Yeah, I did.
And Sam looked at both of our faces, and we thought that was close.
And then it proceeded to rain for like a good 24 hours, just nonstop in the tent.
I did have my dog Wendell with me. I'm an autonomous adult and I get to make my own decisions and deal with the consequences. He's a loyal Australian Shepherd mix and he follows me everywhere and would do pretty much anything I asked him to do. So I was more worried about his well-being. I knew with the fast approaching storm and the thunder getting louder and louder that I wasn't going to be able to make it across the lake. And Agassiz not a big lake. It's 100 acres or less, so it's pretty small. There's an island on Agassiz on the northwest side, so I paddled over to it, which is near where I was fishing, flipped the boat over, tied it to a tree, and Wendell and I waited out the storm together. I never really felt scared. I never really felt like we were in danger. But that's some of the most intense driving rain I've ever been in. And all of us have been in summer storms that are insane and like powerful and scary, but those usually pass in 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes at the worst. But thunder and lightning are obviously something you don't want to mess with. So I just, in my head, was like, I'll wait for it to pass and wait till the lightning is gone. At least 2 hours. We just sat there and I just couldn't believe, like, this is still happening. Like, well over an inch an hour, probably 1.5 inches to 2 inches per hour is my estimate based on the totals I heard after the fact.
Hi, I'm Ann Passes. I live in Grand Marais, but I was in Ely earlier this week where I ran into David Meyer and was reminded of why I've supported the Friends of the Boundary Waters for many years. This precious wilderness area is deserving of our love and our protection. The Friends do a wonderful job of educating and inspiring people to take action to see that it remains pristine and wild.
Hey there folks, it's Brendan Menzie, the mind behind M&Z Gear. At M&Z Gear, our canoe packs are handcrafted right here in Cloquet, Minnesota. At M&Z Gear, we design, make, test, and use all of our gear right here in northern Minnesota. Whether you're on your 10th portage or just trying to find your way back to the car, you can trust M&Z Gear to keep your stuff safe and sound. M&Z Gear, where innovation, durability, and a good sense of humor come standard. Check us out at mnzgear.store and get ready to tackle the wilderness with a smile.
Kind of speculated how much rain we were getting based on, we figured that the shoreline went up probably 3 to 4 inches while we were watching it rain.
Yeah.
Just based on the, where the water line was.
Yeah, rocks that were disappearing and stuff like that, for sure. Yeah.
When we paddled across the lake, it was still very windy, probably 20 mile per hour sustained. It was still raining like crazy, but I had felt that the lightning was far enough away, and it's when Wendell and I booked it and got out of the lake and got back to the portage, which was a river. If you've ever lined your boat up a river, this is what it felt like, except the boat was on my shoulders rather than in the water. I probably could have floated it. There was plenty of water.
Naturally, Eric was soaked from head to toe. Even the best rain gear has a saturation point, and he was well beyond it. His gear was also full of water. He determined it was safest to stow the canoe a short way into his portage back to the parking lot and move swiftly to get his dog Wendell to the shelter of the vehicle. Ditching the now worthless rain gear, he returned for the canoe, eventually completing his mission without incident or injury. The journey home was far from complete.
I knew the storm had passed, but it was still going to rain. And I obviously knew by the amount of water on the trail that roads were going to be affected as well. So I started driving south on the Echo Trail back towards Ely. But basically what was happening is erosion around the culverts, water up and over the culverts, washing out all the gravel and the rock underneath. Only at the points where these rivers, which sometimes hit where culverts existed and sometimes hit at random spots, because obviously this terrain is not meant to take on this amount of water this fast. It was easy for me to tell where the road was, but when I got to a place that was washed out, it was washed out on the right side of me and the left side of me. So the road was literally narrowing as the water was eroding the gravel and the P-rock and the Class 5. So there was one really skinny little pinch point on the road, which is normally easily wide enough for 2 cars, so whatever that is, 20 plus feet. And I drive a small Subaru Forester that can't be more than 6.5 feet across, and I probably had 6 inches on either side of the car of road. Everything was washed out, down to my left, and everything was washed out to my right. On my right was high ground, on my left was low ground, so everything was just falling into the low ground. All of that material that they used to create the road and compact it had just washed away. So I think if I'd gotten back to the car an hour later, I would not have made it back to town. I passed a flatbed truck that had all the fluorescent road closed signs, so I think I was probably one of the last people to get out safely from the Echo that day before they closed everything down and had to turn people around. This whole ordeal is probably only 4 hours it took me to wait the storm out, get to the portage, get back to the car, and make my way down the Echo. And it continued to rain that night, I think until 6:30 or 7, then it shut off, and then it rained again overnight. So yeah, it obviously only got much worse after I traveled down the Echo and away from that portage.
Support for this episode comes from Voyageur Canoe Outfitters, located at the end of the Gunflint Trail in Grand Marais. Voyageur outfits your Boundary Waters trip with as much or as little gear as needed. From fully furnished cabins near the wilderness line to complete outfitting canoe trips, Voyageur has you covered. Head to VoyageurOutfitters.com to book your vacation or call 218-388-2224. Mention Paddle and Portage Podcast and get 10% off your trip. Offer valid only on future reservations for the 2024 season. And support for Paddle and Portage comes from Ely Outfitting Company. Located in downtown Ely, their friendly and knowledgeable team shares expert Boundary Waters trip planning and routing advice. Ely Outfitting Company offers complete outfitting services, lightweight canoe rentals, and professionally guided tours. Now booking 2024 canoe trips. Plan your Boundary Waters trip now at EelyOutfittingCompany.com. Successful Boundary Water canoe trips start with Ely Outfitting Company.
And then the next morning, which would have been Wednesday morning, we went ahead, we woke up, and I have a Garmin inReach, and the weather said it was going to be windy and still a lot of rain. And I was thinking, we're supposed to get rain today, possibly Thursday and Friday. I just don't want to spend our entire trip in the tent. And we made the decision to break camp and go ahead and head out. So we tore down camp and started heading back down Fort Town. It was windy, but not quite Whitecap, but it was starting to get pretty rough. And went through and started getting to the portages to head into Fort Town. And that's when we kind of started to notice that, we must have gotten a lot more rain than we thought, because the first portage, the last probably third of the portage was underwater with rapids. And then it was like that as well for the second portage. And then the last portage, except for maybe 20 steps, the entire portage was underwater. I was up to my knees. I'm 5'4", I was up to my knees, and it was rapids as well. So the current had actually come up onto the portages, and then got onto Mudro. And when we went in on Monday, we had reeds that we had to weave through. And on the way back, when we got to that area, we're looking ahead and we realized that the water was so high that we were just paddling right over the reeds.
Out of Four Town, that water was easily up 3 feet.
The portages, and it was white water, it wasn't just rapids. In some places was waist deep, and we were walking the canoes along the edge of the steep banks. We really didn't have anywhere to go, except upstream along the edge in the slackest water we could find.
We started getting a little bit closer up, and we realized that we were paddling on the portage because the water was so high. So we ended up getting out and just walked the canoe right up to the steps. And normally that's was it like a 30-rod portage that you're supposed to go from the lake to the steps, and we just paddled right up to the steps again.
It was a shock to come up on that entry point and see what was going over the top of the culverts.
The parking lot was clear, but the road that divides Pickett Lake and Mudro was completely underwater. So a big chunk of bog and some branches had actually broken off and were blocking the 2 culverts that run underneath the road. And that was a big cause of the problems. But as the day started to go on, you could see it started eroding more and more and more of the road, but it was completely impassable.
So we are, I think, the second group in, but we didn't know that the second road was out until I think the other Josh group had called the Forest Service, and they said, yeah, the excavator has already kind of gone into the water. That one's probably, more problematic than this one.
And then by that time they were telling us perhaps even Saturday or Sunday before we got out.
Yeah, they thought that's maybe the earliest that they could see both of those areas getting fixed. So at that point, we knew we were around. We laid out all our stuff and started drying it out and said, where's a good place to put a tent?
It was kind of a little heartbreaking, a little worrying, but it's like, well, of all people to get stranded at a parking lot, people going in the Boundary Waters are probably the best equipped. You got your tents, you got your water filtration. Thankfully, we had several extra days worth of food because we came out early. So it's like we were set. And I remember the other Josh talking on the phone, and they were asking, hey, do you have food? Do you have water? Are you good to go? And we're like, yeah, we're fine. We just wanted to let you know that, hey, the road's gone.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Lucas Leaf, Executive Director at Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters. We're out here at Bent Paddle. We're super appreciative of everything that Bent Paddle has done for us in the past. And they just have amazing beer. They made one for us. It's called Paddle and Beer. So definitely come check them out. Great brewery here in Duluth, Minnesota. And can't recommend them more. Here you go.
No, the other groups there were just, so welcoming, and anytime somebody would come in, like Isaiah and his son Micah, very experienced paddlers, had flipped coming out of Mudro and into the entry point. So they were soaked. So, people just grabbing their stuff and getting it up, on land for them. And so it became very much a community. And, a lot of those groups had come in early, so they had extra food, and so they were willing to share if we needed it.
The parking lot was pretty much full.
Yeah, I think I counted, and in the main part, there was about 28 cars, and then there was 2 cars with trailers up in the overflow spots. So in total, we probably had 30 cars.
Because Josh and his son were there, and then we showed up, but right behind us was Mark and Jared and their group of 4. And then Isaiah and his son showed up, and they were the ones that had swamped in the current. They just got an unlucky turn. And then we actually had a family of 4 that we were not expecting them because they showed up at like 8:30, and they had come all the way down from Lower Basswood Falls that day. So we had an extra 4. So we actually ended up with 5 groups.
Isaiah and Micah shared soup with us that night, and that was good. We all had plenty to eat. Every group did. We were all sharing kind of what we had, so we made sure everybody had enough.
Yeah.
I still had high hopes, and you just kind of have to make the best of those moments. You had time to meet everyone and tell stories with everyone, so we had time to really get to know each other.
We went and grabbed some river rocks and Found a gravel area and made a campfire and kind of hung out for a while out there.
We all kind of sat around the fire that evening and swapped stories, yeah.
So on Wednesday afternoon, 3 o'clock, a couple of the Forest Service guys showed up and they said that, the reason why we couldn't leave, even if we got through the road where we were, is because of the washout. And we're working on this washout. The excavator fell in. I guess the culvert had unraveled and shot down the downstream side. And then he said they barely managed to get their vehicle on the safe side of the road to get down to us. And we've got an engineer that's going to be coming, but we need to fix this other culvert problem first. So even if you could get out from here, you can't get past that culvert. They said if you really, really have to get out, that we could go through Pickett and Portage to Nels, and then someone could pick us up at Nels. But, for some of us that didn't work. But for the one group, they decided to do that Thursday morning because, again, they were out of food.
And John said, he goes, there's another way out of here, don't you? And we were all ears. And he said, yeah, you can go out and pick it. And there's a portage that's not used very much. So it's going to be probably overgrown. And that goes into Nels. And then there's a gravel road. So then we said with the group, hey, I think we're going to try to make a go for it the next day. We're happy bushwhacking. We're not going to take chances, but we're going to call the outfitter and say, hey, can we meet you at 10 o'clock? And then Josh and Kaethe, they decided to stay. Isaiah and his son, Micah, said, no, we'll go through.
The portages out were kind of interesting in that short time. They were. Yeah. We were waist deep in water again, and there was a beaver dam.
The water was definitely high. There's one of the biggest beaver dams I've seen. It's huge. And there it was, water chugging over it. And there was not a log loose. I mean, the thing was rock solid. And I think Jared made the comment. He said, meanwhile, the humans are down the road playing around with excavators and culverts that are unraveling. And here's the busy beaver just cruising along saying, flood? What flood?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it didn't even look like it had been, and none of it had been swept away.
We got to the Echo Trail and outfitter picked us up from that. Basically, it's kind of the end of the gravel road into Nels there. Everybody's safe and dry.
We were kind of debating on what we were going to do, if we were going to spend another night or paddle through the two Pickett and Nels and get picked up there and just get back into town at least.
And sure enough, a little while later, we heard the sound of the excavator coming down, and they were able to get just enough dug up and enough of a temporary fix that the road was safe to pass. And this Forest Service was like, can you guys be ready in 15 to 20 minutes? Because if you can, we're going to let you go through. But after that, we're going to close the road again because there were also two large bogs still in Pickett that looked like they were trying to work their way towards the culverts. And they were concerned that there would be another washout.
But thankfully, they were able to get the road fixed and we were able to drive out of there.
I forgot. So when we got to Nels, there was another pair of Forest Service agents that had just pulled up and they were getting ready to zip out and actually clear that trail that we went through. And there was a few trees down, but I thought, here's almost an unused trail. And they thought that there might be other people coming out that way. And I'm guessing that's why they went back in. And I tell you what, I know they were putting in a lot of overtime, but you couldn't read it on their faces. They were all in. And so great respect and appreciation for what they did.
They were great. They were really, really helpful. The guys that came back were really good at communicating the situation. I think they did it honestly and clearly. And I think they definitely assuaged some of our concerns just by their demeanor and the way they handled the situation. And then I think also the outfitters, Voyager North Outfitters, was awesome. I mean, they came and got us. Really no questions asked, got us back to something warm and dry, and I had really, really good experience with them too. Those guys were great.
I just booked another entry permit for Mudro for July 18th, so I'm hoping that the road's solid by then. It hasn't changed my mind. It's just a beautiful place. I think taking your time and being thoughtful on things. Safety first, right? I think that's always the mantra anytime you're traveling backwoods. I'm going back for sure.
I would probably definitely go back, but this trip really made me see and respect it a lot more and see like how powerful and dangerous it can really be. But also next time we'll be more careful and everything. But yeah, it definitely does not stray me away.
Yeah, we were actually, when we were talking to Josh and his son at dinner on Thursday night, he's like, this might have been the horrible trip. He's like, but it seems like the horrible trips are the ones that give you the best stories and that you're never going to forget. And he's absolutely right.
We've been through some weather-related things on our adventures that we've shared on the podcast over the years, from late ice out to having to break through ice and some bad storms in the winter, 40 below on New Year's on a fishing opener trip that we did. But we've never really been in the thick of something quite like this that we heard on the episode today.
Absolutely not. And I don't wish anybody would have to, but it is so inspiring and incredible how folks adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And makes me proud to be a human.
Yeah, I mean, I think we heard that throughout the episode from the different groups, is that theme of we're boundary waters paddlers, and there's just a certain camaraderie that exists and a bond that alone brings people together when things go wrong. And we hear that from search and rescue crews and the search and rescue teams themselves, that people can rally, people can come together during these storms that you were sharing with us on the episode today through the stories. That people on the Gunflint that night, that you and I were talking that night of the 18th, people were getting out on the Gunflint with chainsaws, opening the road so the ambulance could get through for the 9-year-old boy who was injured up on Snipe Lake, people working to repair these culverts that were washing out. Like, people rallying together, and that's part of this too.
It's an amazing community. I hope that we can continue to rally ourselves around our collective human challenges in the same way we do around challenging weather. Come on, people, we got this.
That's right. That's a fine connection to make, and at the same time, it all comes back to individual level, and on that mind, I know you got to get back down to your driveway and deal with the culvert situation, so you better get the shovel, get back down to work. Enough time doing the podcast. You got things going on.
Got my rain jacket on, my boots, and waterproof and ready to go.
Back to it.
So I like to sing, I love to dance, I play the fool if I got the chance. All around the campfire light, all around the campfire light, all round, all round, all round the campfire light.